Right now on Upfront.
Countdown to Election Day.
That is absurd.
That's a reality.
Absurd.
The fiery Wisconsin Supreme Court debate, the reaction still coming in. Appeals Court Judge Maria Lazar.
What's at stake in this race? Justice.
Judge Chris Taylor.
Protect their rights, protect our democracy, and protect our elections.
Here in studio for the rescheduled first and only debate, now just days ahead of Election Day. In-person early voting ending today. Polls opening in less than 48 hours.
This Sunday, inside the debate, the recap, the big moments, the candidates in their own words. Then the reaction and the election ahead. Democratic Party of Wisconsin Chair Devin Remaker and Republican Party of Wisconsin Chair Brian Schimming together just moments away.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Easter Sunday. Now just 2 days from Election Day. In-person early voting wrapping up today, and still reaction coming in from our primetime state Supreme Court debate.
Appeals Court Judges Maria Lazar, the conservative-backed candidate, and Chris Taylor, the liberal-backed candidate, facing off Thursday night in the rescheduled debate. The winner Tuesday replacing conservative Justice Rebecca Bradley, who isn't seeking another 10-year term on the High Court.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for your patience.
It was the debate that almost seemed destined not to happen. First rescheduled to Thursday after Judge Chris Taylor was diagnosed with kidney stones.
We are going to be on that delay here.
Then an hour delay Thursday night because of severe weather.
If you are tuning in for the debate right now, that was set to begin at 7 o'clock. As Ray just mentioned, that is going to be on a delay.
But in their first and only debate ahead of Tuesday's election, they were ready.
With control of the court not at stake, tell us what is at stake in this race.
Well, people should care, and I think they do care about this race. I have traveled all over the state of Wisconsin for the last 11 months, and I have met Wisconsinites from every corner of this state who are hungry for a government that works for them and prioritizes them. And they are hungry for a justice that's going to stand up for them, protect their rights, protect our democracy, and protect our elections. Those things have never been more important.
What's at stake in this race? Justice, integrity, independence. I am running to stop the erosion of faith in our state Supreme Court. The choice in this race could not be more clear. On the one hand, you have a judge, an experienced judge, who's been on the bench for more than 12 years protecting the rights of everyone in the state. And on the other hand, you have a radical extreme legislator who is known as the most liberal of the 99 in that assembly.
And with that, we were off. Appeals Court Judges Maria Lazar, backed by conservatives, and Judge Chris Taylor, backed by liberals, painting each other as extremists and clashing over everything from recusals to their own records and abortion. In a 4-3 decision led by the court's liberal majority last summer, the court's liberal justices invalidated the state's 1849 abortion ban. To both of you, Judge Lazar, we'll start with you. Would you have voted with the court's liberal or conservative justices on that, and why?
I think in that case, I'm not going to comment where I would have voted. I didn't really follow all the briefs and everything that happened. But I will tell you this. I totally 100% respect the decision that was made. I will honor that 20-week compromise. I think that it falls within the parameters of where people in the state believe it should be. And if they don't, the answer is to go to the legislature and the governor, not the courts. My opponent, when she was in the legislature, said that she thought that it shouldn't be 20 weeks or any type of restriction whatsoever, but that abortion should be allowed at any time during the pregnancy up to the end. And she still stands with that. And I think that is out of the mainstream for the people in this state.
Judge Shelley, you can respond, but first, would you have voted with the court's liberal or conservatives?
I would have voted to not implement the 1849 criminal abortion ban. It was superseded by a whole suite of laws that directly conflicted with it. So I think it was the right decision. My opponent in the past has said on television that she would have likely voted with the minority in that case to implement that 1849 abortion ban. Nobody supports what my opponent is saying. Nobody. But I want to say this. There is no one more extreme ever to be a candidate on issues of reproductive health care than my opponent. She called the overturning of Roe versus Wade very wise. And you can look it up on television. She said it right on television. She said she was likely to vote to support.
I'm going to respond. I did not say I was likely to vote. I did not respond ever in that regard. And what I said about Dobbs, which is the decision that overturned Roe versus Wade, is I said it was good that it brought that national ban and put it back into each individual state. So if California, where my opponent's from, or Ohio, or Texas, or Wisconsin, and their citizens want to enact a law that they believe reflects their values, they do so through their legislators.
Okay, so it is tragic that we have someone running for the state Supreme Court that is celebrating that there are women all over this country who are victims of rape and incest who no longer are able
that's tragic.
to get
I've never
access.
said that.
Let me finish.
Ever.
Elections again are front and center, coming off President Trump's executive order this past week. His push to ban mail-in voting, and Congress debating the SAVE Act, which would require nationwide voter ID and proof of citizenship, all of which will likely end up in court.
Judge Lazar, in a press release referring to the SAVE Act, you've promised to uphold Wisconsin's voter ID law and said federal gridlock continues to stall common sense election integrity measures. Do you support every provision in the SAVE Act, including a possible ban on mail-in voting?
No, I don't. What I was talking about and what I stand for is the fact that in Wisconsin, the citizens of this state voted to have a voter ID requirement when you vote, and that's what I would uphold. What I look at, and some of the, and I actually believe that early voting is responsible and important and necessary and vital. And I think that mail-in voting the same. So I don't stand for all the things that they're throwing in now or talking about now federally. I think it's important that we tell people in the state of Wisconsin that our elections are safe, they're secure, and that their votes count. And that's the key important thing that we need to address in this state.
Judge Taylor, you've previously called Wisconsin's voter ID law one of the most extreme in the country, saying its true intention is suppressing our ability to vote. Last April, more than 60% of Wisconsin voters approved enshrining the state's voter ID law into the state constitution. How did you vote on that?
When I was in the legislature?
On the constitutional amendment last April.
Oh, well, what I do in the ballot box is nobody's business. But I can say that it is the law of the land, and I will implement the law of the land. I'm glad to hear my opponent say that every vote should count, because she has been endorsed in the past by people who led the charge in trying to overturn our 2020 election. And that is very alarming. She will not say whether the Trump v. Biden lawsuit that was filed in 2020 in an attempt to overturn our election, which was defeated by our state Supreme Court by one vote. My opponent will not say whether that was the right decision. I am committed to making sure that all citizens who are eligible to vote can cast a ballot. I am very concerned by what I hear from the federal government. We have the ability as a state, it's our authority to administer our elections. And it seems to me that the federal government is trying to infringe on the independence of the state of Wisconsin. And that is very concerning.
Any response to that? 2020?
Yes, I would say that I'm not, people who may have endorsed me in the past, I'm not responsible for all of their thoughts, their ideas. That's absolutely absurd, and that's not a way to look at things. And my endorsements this year, as I've told you, have been very limited. I've put only the people recently, the law enforcement endorsements and my judicial endorsements on my website. That's who I've been endorsed by. Those are the endorsements I've sought this time. With respect to elections, I agree. Every vote should count, and I am 100% for that.
WisPolitics has tallied the latest spending in the race, nearly $8 million in support of Judge Taylor and nearly $1 million in support of Judge Lazar, a far cry from the $115 million in last year's Supreme Court race. Judge Lazar, conservative groups spent tens of millions last year to help Brad Schimmel, but haven't done the same with you. Is it because they don't think you can win, or because you've said you're not a Republican?
Well, one, I can win, I will win. And two, the reason why is I'm running not as a conservative. I've never been a member of a party, so I'm not a Republican, and I'm running as an independent. And I think that's the key here.
Judge Taylor, millions, including from liberal donors, have still been spent to back your campaign. Is it because you still say that you are a Democrat, or they've been assured on how you will vote?
I'm not a member of the Democratic Party. I am really proud of the incredible grassroots support that I've received throughout the state of Wisconsin. Tens of thousands of Wisconsinites have become part of this campaign.
My opponent filled out the FCC paperwork indicating that she still is a Democrat to this day. I filled it out saying that I am an independent.
We covered a lot in our hour-long conversation. There is so much more. You can watch the full hour-long debate right now on the WISN 12 News YouTube page. You can find it in the Upfront playlist.
All right, coming up, the state party chairs right here, ready to respond. Democratic Party of Wisconsin Chair Devin Remacher, Republican Party of Wisconsin Chair Brian Shimmy, both here next.
Every Sunday on Upfront,
Jared, we're on Capitol Hill.
the biggest names in politics come here. The issues, the interviews,